12 years ago, Hello Games burst onto the scene when it first revealed No Man's Sky at the Old Spike Game Awards, and it's quite fitting that 10 years later they revealed their next huge project, Light No Fire, at an iteration of that award show. Now, since then, it's been about 14 months since that big reveal, and we've learned pretty much nothing since that trailer. But there is a whole lot of information that we do actually know about this massively ambitious project, along with plenty of speculation, and all of this makes for one of the most anticipated games, possibly of the next decade. Light No Fire is not trying to recreate a fully explorable universe like No Man's Sky was, but instead is going to be remaining grounded on a fantasy Earth. Though that's all it's remaining grounded on because this project is said to be as ambitious, if not more so, than its predecessor. Now, this time around, Hello Games are switching up the sci fi of outer space to the fantasy of this full size Earth, and that opens up an entirely new avenue for both Hello Games to experiment with. So, things like new systems, new gameplay mechanics, and all that sort of good stuff. Now, a lot of players will be wary of this project mainly because of how the launch of No Man's Sky went, because the pre release marketing and all the interviews that Sean did promised so many features that just were not there to begin with. Though now, of course, they are there, along with a boatload more. But Light No Fire is still one of mine and probably one of the gaming industry's most anticipated games of the next few years. So here's what we know about it. So first, let me address the topic of a release date, because right now, as of me recording this audio, we don't have a clue when the game is going to be releasing. And part of the reason for that is because Hello Games have suggested they don't want a long drawn out marketing cycle and they don't want a repeat of the botched No Man's Sky launch. Though, if you would like my guess, I would say we're not getting the game in 2025. Now, why do I say that? Well, Sean would have been pushing more information out about it by now. Though the flip side is, of course, they could announce a release date less than 6 months before it goes live. Unlikely, but still possible. Now, if you ask me, and this is of course a total guess on my part, so don't take it as gospel, I think it's going to be released around the time of No Man's Sky's 10th anniversary. So that makes a release date of 2026 in the summer. Again, total guess, guys, but do you guys have any different opinions to that? Perhaps I'm being less optimistic than others, or perhaps I'm being more realistic. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Let me know in the comments. So let's move on and talk about the platforms that the game is going to be released on, and the only confirmed one so far is PC, because you can currently wishlist Light No Fire on Steam right now, so that's pretty an obvious platform. But what about consoles? Well, I'd be downright shocked if the game wasn't also going to be released on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X or S. And there is some sense behind my reasoning here. Basically, No Man's Sky has been made available on all platforms besides mobile, I think. In recent times, they've added the games to like Mac, kept supporting it on old consoles, so the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. They even added a cut down version of it to the freaking Nintendo Switch. Now, I'm almost certain they're going to be ditching the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 for Light No Fire because they just won't be able to handle it. But initially, at least, I think we'll see it launch on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and the PlayStation 5. So, what do we know about the size of this game? Well, to put it bluntly, the planet you're going to be on in Light No Fire is the exact size of our very own Earth, like a 1-to-1 scale. That means the map size, or Earth size, whatever you want to call it, will be a whopping 510 million square kilometers, or 197 million square miles, of which every inch can be explored. And that is just nuts. Now let me put that into perspective for you for like a single map. So if you take Assassin's Creed Odyssey as a first example, that was a fairly decent open world game. Now if you include the landmass and the sea, then that's only 256 square kilometers. Another example would be The Crew, where you can drive from the west coast to the east coast of the USA and it would take you about 45 minutes in a fast car. That map size is 1,900 square miles. So basically, you get the point. Light No Fire's size is astronomical. Is it the largest game ever made? No, hell no. But the fact that Hello Games are trying to cram this behemoth full of stuff, so points of interest, enemies, survival elements, role-playing elements, multiplayer, and a whole host of other stuff, is a serious undertaking. It doesn't take a genius to know that this game is going to be using a lot of procedural generation to build its setting and everything else that the world has to offer. Now, we all know that Hello Games know a thing or two about that because they've used it extensively in No Man's Sky. So I'm not worried about their ability to apply it well. What I am worried about, though, with the world being this big, is the world feeling empty. But I'll go into more detail about what we know about the world in just a minute. But before I go on to that, let me talk about multiplayer in Light No Fire. Now, one thing is obvious from the trailer. This world, whatever the world is going to be called, is a multiplayer world. That means we'll be able to see other players going about their business, play co-op with other players, the number of which is yet to be determined, but judging by the trailer, it looks to be an absolute minimum of 4 people, if not a lot more. The game's description mentions that we can build a life, explore, and survive together, so it looks like we're going to be doing literally anything in this game with other players, if you so desire, of course. So you could be creating buildings with the players, going on expeditions, discovering new areas and points of interest, and so on and so forth. Another thing we know is that the buildings and communities will be persistent, so that means you can be out exploring the world and come across a building, village, town, or whatever that other players have built or what other groups of players have built. I think that's a really neat addition for me because when it comes to No Man's Sky, I absolutely love visiting other players' bases. This obviously indicates that we're going to be able to find other players if we're sort of playing online but by ourselves. Granted, it'd be unlikely because of the size of the thing, but still possible. But perhaps we can join a party with our friends and spawn on the planet wherever they happen to be. Because let's say your friend happens to be on the other side of the world, it's going to take you a damn long time to join them, even if you're taking the quick route via a dragon. Which makes me think there's going to be portals or fast travel or some sort of thing involved. How that's going to be implemented yet, I do not know, but I'd be surprised if it wasn't there. One thing that we're not too sure about when it comes to multiplayer just yet is how many players are going to be on the planet at any given time. Obviously, there's going to be an upper limit to this, but we don't currently know what that is. But I'll cover all of this and more as when we get new information on the game, hopefully real soon. Right, now let's talk about the features that we know are going to be in the game. And the first two are building and resource gathering. And we know this because in the trailer we see buildings being constructed with a pretty cool animation, I may add. But we also see characters chopping down trees. Now, this is not new in the gaming world and nothing particularly new to Hello Games either. They've just traded a terrain manipulator for axes and whatever else. It's not entirely clear if the characters chopping down trees and building are NPCs or if these are actual people playing the game. Though we do know we can build communities even if you're playing alone, so these could be workers. Who knows? But one thing's for sure, building looks to be quite a large part of the game. So, moving on to combat. It looks like there are going to be a few different types of combat into the game. So, like a bow and arrow, sword combat, magic combat. Now, although we don't see magic combat, we did see a staff. So, I'm hoping it's going to be magic. Now, considering Light No Fire has RPG elements in the game as well, it's very likely that we'll be able to build our own character depending on our preferred playstyle, which is neat. It also looks like we can upgrade our weapons to some degree, or at least add weapon enhancements, for example, because in the trailer, albeit very briefly, we can see one character using a sword, which is on fire. We all know the world in this game is absolutely massive, and getting around it on foot will be slow as hell. So the good news is we have various mounts and other means of travel, some which we may not even know about just yet, like I mentioned, possible fast travel portals, who knows. Anyway, what we do know is there are going to be ground mounts, and what we saw from some of the horse-type creatures with horns, there are also giant birds which you can ride, and my personal favourite, dragons. Now, on top of these mounts, we're also able to use boats to get across the oceans and lakes, and finally we have gliders, so you can probably glide from the top of a mountain to the bottom. Basically, all of these will allow for a quicker traversal across this giant fantasy planet. And speaking of oceans and lakes and stuff, we know there are going to be a lot of them in this game, which are going to give us a whole host of other gameplay features along with them. The ones we know about so far are shipwrecks, because that was in the trailer, and this could lead to maybe ship-to-ship combat being a feature, as well as exploring these shipwrecks to search for hidden treasures and loot. There are also plenty of fish you can see when the character is swimming, so perhaps fishing will be a feature. Now, fishing did get added to No Man's Sky recently, so there's a good chance it'll be added to Light No Fire as well. It can also become one of the part of the survival features, so getting fishing to eat and survive, basically. We actually got a preview, or a playable version, I guess, of just how deep the oceans in Light No Fire can be, because No Man's Sky's latest huge update, Worlds Part 2, added some serious ocean depth to the game. Like, we're talking a few kilometers deep, compared to the previous, 100 meters max pre-update. So the Worlds Part 2 deep dive, Sean did say they'd been really busy on Light No Fire. In a nutshell, basically they've added some features from Light No Fire's development into No Man's Sky. And guys, the new oceans that are, well, they're freaking awesome, basically. So we can definitely expect something similar from day one in Light No Fire. So moving on from gameplay features that we know about so far, Light No Fire's description claims the game brings the depth of a role-playing game to the freedom of a survival sandbox. So it is guaranteed we're going to be getting elements of both. How in-depth both of these are at this stage is yet to be seen, though. Well, let's go into the RPG elements first. And based on the different styles of combat we already know about, I see this as a guarantee that we're going to get a character creation beyond just visuals, which probably includes some sort of attribute points to our character to give them, different abilities in different areas of combat, depending on their preferred playstyle. And we'll be able to level these up as well, I think, as we progress throughout the game. Though, alternatively, different characters may also have different attribute points to begin with, depending on which character type we select. More on that in just a minute. But usually with RPG games as well, we're given dialogue options when conversing with NPCs during quests and whatnot, so I suspect it's going to be true of Light No Fire, to a degree at least. We do see at one stage characters walking into some sort of castle-type building with other characters bowing, so maybe we could see some in-depth quest lines about becoming a ruler of a place, or settling into this community, who knows. Hopefully find out more on that specific thing sooner rather than later. So we also know the game is going to evolve a lot more of a focus on survival mechanics alongside the RPG side of things. Also recently confirmed further by Sean Murray himself as he quoted this tweet which mentions, well, exactly that, RPG and survival focus. Now, how in-depth the survival mechanics of Light No Fire is yet to be seen, but I suspect it's going to include things like hunger, so our character needs to eat, and to do that we might need to go hunting, which we sort of see in the trailer, I think. There's guys with bow and arrows shooting what appears to be a boar. Anyway, we may need to allow our character to rest. There's going to be resource gathering, as I mentioned, hunting, and a few other things. But moving on from that, what about playable characters? Well, we know that we can play as a few different species in Light No Fire. Whether or not each one has different attributes to start with is another question entirely. But we do know there's going to be RPG elements in the game, so it's not out of the question that these characters are going to have different abilities and weaknesses, so to speak. But here are a list of playable character types that we know of so far, and I will cycle through a few screenshots as proof of those as well. So we know we can play as a human, as a wolf, or perhaps wolf's not a wolf and it's a fox. It's a little bit difficult to tell. Definitely one of the two though, I think. There's a rabbit, there's a badger, a bear, an otter, a frog, and we can see a pig as well. And all these have been deduced from the trailer. I'm personally hoping each of these characters have different strengths and weaknesses, considering there is RPG elements in the game, because otherwise they're just cosmetic like in No Man's Sky and have no real effect. And whilst that's not really an issue in a space exploration game without RPG mechanics, it would be a little bit of an issue for me in Light No Fire. Now I'm talking about things like an otter is obviously going to be a far better or faster swimmer than a bear, but a bear should be much stronger than an otter, and a rabbit should be much quicker than a pig, just for example. Just more things like that would be awesome to have in the game. Now switching over to the side of things and on to enemies, and we do get very small glimpses of combat in the trailer, though it's hard to deduce much from it without using screenshots like this one, which looks like the guys are firing bow and arrows at a boar, as I mentioned a minute ago. I think this may be more to do with hunting and survival compared to an actual enemy, though a boar could still probably kill you. Another screenshot seems to suggest there is going to be a giant crab type creature, along with smaller crab minions, I guess, that you can see in the bottom right of this screenshot. And perhaps the large one is a boss battle. Now, I would love some boss battles in this game, to be honest, and I suspect we might see quite a few of them because it is one giant fantasy world after all. There are going to be a lot of fantasy enemies included in the game. We also briefly see an octopus underwater, and although no one is engaging in combat with it, It could suggest we've got deep sea monsters as an enemy in the game, which certainly fits the bill for a fantasy world with incredibly deep oceans. And one of the most obvious ones is probably skeletons, because we see them in the trailer. There's both human sized and extra small sized by the looks of it, which could perhaps suggest there is also bigger ones that we haven't yet seen, which would be awesome as well. And finally, I have absolutely no idea what this thing is, but I would love to know if it's a boss battle of some sort because the thing looks freaking massive. Though, with that being said, the characters aren't exactly readying themselves for battle in its presence, so perhaps it's not an enemy after all. Only time will tell with that one. And that is everything we know about Light No Fire so far, as of the beginning of February 2025 when I'm recording this. I will continue to create videos around Light No Fire as and when we get more information about it, but what I want to know is, what would you love to see in the game that we don't already know about? Let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can also become a channel member as well, and as always, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in my next one.